welcome to Hunters and Unicorns, the Sales Leaders Playbook. I'm Simon Kutis and I'm joined by my co-host Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And we're absolutely delighted to be welcomed by Marjorie Janiewicz. Marjorie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Simon and Ollie. I'm delighted to be here this morning.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Marjorie. And I actually think, Simon, you did a fantastic job in pronouncing Marjorie's second name there. So well done, mate.
It's a great win. It's a great win indeed. And it is indeed a fantastic to have you on the show, Marjorie. It is really, really, truly an honor to have you with us today. By way of an introduction, you are currently the CRO at Foursquare. But it's been a really exciting and a very distinguished career, and we're really, really excited to really get in amongst it. But you're currently at Foursquare. It's quite an exciting transition. Tell us a little bit about the mission and what it is you're actually doing at Foursquare right now.
Yeah, so Foursquare is a 12 years old company. I think a lot of you may know Foursquare as the checking app. Now, the mission has evolved quite a lot over the last 12 years, and our mission and our vision today is very much to empower developers, data scientists, and marketers to really foster and maximize the power of location data, meaning places data and movement data to drive business decisions and improve customer experiences. So, you know, if you're using a Uber app, a Walmart app, all the way to a Disney app, if you're a parent in Disney World, if it tells you where, it's probably built on Foursquare.
Wow. It's a very exciting organization, and, you know, there's huge scope. We're going to go into quite a lot of detail around the actual mission and the playbook that you're running there, because it's an adaptation of, you know, the playbook that you've obviously built your reputation on. So we're going to spend a bit of time really talking about how you've had to adapt and what you're trying to do and why that's really important. But Marjorie, where I really want to start with this conversation is to really understand your entry into sales. Just take us right to the beginning. How did that happen?
Yeah, so the beginning, fortunately or unfortunately, is quite a long time ago, but you know, like many sellers, I didn't really know I wanted to go into sales. All I knew is that I had an appetite for fixing problems, understanding problems and bringing solutions. And naturally, it led me to sales. I started my career in Ireland at the time where really the economy was booming in 1998. So started my career at Apple and then Oracle. Very grateful for those large organizations that really gave me a good foundation for what sales is. But after that, I rapidly realized I just absolutely love building teams, building great businesses. So I started to work for startups, starting with MySQL, the open source database company. That was my first really sales leadership role after a few years. I built a corporate sales team in EMEA. So, you know, the accent is French. I started my career in Europe. After MySQL, where I built a high velocity engine for Europe, I moved to SuccessFactors, so HR tech. Started also in Europe, leading corporate sales teams, so think SMB and middle market. And then 2008, recession hit, and the CEO at the time, Lars Dalgaard, asked me to repeat the good things we had done in Europe in the US. So this was my entry into building global sales organizations and starting working in the US. Stayed through the SAP acquisition. So a great experience to see how a playbook can actually be attractive for large organizations. And I was asked to help SAP to really adapt the software as a service playbook to an SAP world for small and mid-sized organizations. Super successful, a good time there. You wanted to ask something?
No, I was going to say it's interesting because that was at the small organization, and then you were acquired by SAP, which was a very large organization. I suppose, how did you kind of deal with that massive transition and influence, and kind of just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think SAP at the time was going through a lot of transformation and really wanted to learn the differences between selling and going to market with on-premise software, and wanted to learn how to really migrating to more of a cloud delivery. And of course, there's work to do on the product side and the engineering side to get there. But I think SAP really understood that it also took really dramatic GTM changes to be able to adapt to cloud delivery over on-prem. So there was a lot of appetite from SAP to learn. And I did spend, a few months explaining how can you mirror the customer buying behavior in the SaaS world with how you actually sell in that world. So, it wasn't easy to start translating some of the differences because there are many. But it was a great experience working closely with the SAP cloud teams at the time to evolve the SAP playbook for small and mid-sized companies in the context of that transformation.
So you've obviously had a huge impact, a big title. You're vice president of worldwide corporate sales, as you say, and then you make the transition into MongoDB in 2013, July 2013.
Yes.
First of all, how did that happen? And this was a really crucial moment in your career because everything kind of came together at this moment. So how did that come about? And what were your first impressions when you kind of first walked through the door?
Yeah, so how it came about is I've always had a pretty strong appetite for disruption, disrupting big markets. And, after my experience at SuccessFactors, disrupting the HR world, it was time for me to look for another disruption. And I had some pretty good experience in the database space because I'd spent time, of course, at MySQL and Oracle. But through, connections of people I knew at the time, I got introduced to the MongoDB leadership. And this was years before the way we know Mongo today. I saw the massive potential to disrupt and for myself to have an impact with my database background and my corporate sales background to be able to really help drive Mongo's success. Now, I joined very early, and I think my journey at Mongo was absolutely transformational, but I think that transformation really happened when Devon Cheria and Carlos de la Torre joined and really helped me understand that, leading high-performing sales teams is really about a process. I had a pretty good sense of how to build and run teams successfully, but I think the MongoDB experience really helped me see how granular that process can be, how you can recruit, develop, and execute on a day-to-day basis based on a playbook that can really unlock fantastic results. So, spent about 3 years at MongoDB under their leadership, and I think it propulsed the way I look at running sales organizations and most importantly, driving great business outcomes for companies.
Amazing. And so you were there pre-Carlos and David Chiaria. Was it a big shockwave coming through the organization when they joined? Did you feel the impact straight away? Tell us a little bit about those two joining the organization and how that, was exposed in the company.
Yeah, I think this experience is probably the best example I have seen in my career around change management. And I think that experience actually helped me even design for myself, for the future of my career, how to lead transformation initiatives. So it was a big shock to the system. But I think for anyone that has the appetite to drive improvements, both on how they operate, but their own skill set as leaders, if you are intellectually curious and you embrace basically the playbook, you really multiply your results in a big way. So big shock to the system. It took a lot of self-reflection. It took a lot of trust on the process. But then you see the results. You see the results in dollars. You see the results in career progressions for everyone involved. And I think, long story short, big shock to the system. Definitely a big impact, and career making for many involved, and many of us that I would call the second or third generation of the John McMahon playbook would probably say similar things. You can see all our career trajectories, career making. Thank you, MongoDB.
Kind of going to that MongoDB, I imagine that those were a lot of the strategies that they were trying to really go after, right? To evolve what was there, to create a uniform standard, but then also to recruit and supplement and then continue with that. And you referenced the fact that this was one of the best change managements that you've actually seen at MongoDB. How were they? What was the approach? What did they do in that moment and you thought, wow, this is a really effective way to really get these messages across?
Yeah, I think and that's something I've used ever since. I think first it's being crystal clear on what the change is, why is it? But most importantly, a lot of companies say, this is the change we need to do, go do it. I think the beauty of what happened in Mongo, which is what I think a best practice that every company should follow, is really being pretty granular on the how are the sellers actually supposed to do it. So it's the development of a value framework that really crystallize, this is the value drivers that our customers are pursuing. This is how we, as an organization, deliver that value. This is how we do it better. And the documentation of those things coming from a really deep alignment across sales, marketing, product, customer success, engineering, delivering that framework to the sales team, and then most importantly, from there, managing the business day to day based on those principles and having the instrumentation to track how are we actually doing against those really help that change management to be an ongoing fine-tuning process. You can control that all the way to then going back to the topic of hiring. Are the folks who are bringing to the sales team able to adapt to the value framework, and most importantly, are they able to execute on what we're asking them to do with it?
Again, it's really interesting to kind of hear your take on that. I suppose being on the receiving end of that, Marjorie, you've obviously gone into an organization with a really big reputation, you've got a big title, you've got lots of success, and then all of a sudden these new processes are being kind of thrown at you. How did you respond to that? Was there any reluctance, or were you just completely open-minded? What was your journey of embracing that change?
Yeah, I think I really think it comes down to the DNA of the sellers or the leaders in the organization. Not specifically speaking about MongoDB, but even thinking about how my teams have reacted to us launching similar processes, whether we speak about HackerOne or more recently Foursquare. I think it starts with, everybody needs to want to get better. And I think change is hard. But again, none of the things that are including in the playbook, like we already talked about, getting access to the economic barrier, building a business case, building champions, those concepts are not new. I think what facilitated the change management and what was really mind-blowing in a good way for me was, again, that because we provide the how to the sales team, it's not one of those trainings or one-time enablement curriculum where we're just asking you to adopt a new methodology. The depth on the how to adapt it, and then training leaders on how to coach based on that, I think is the explosive link. It means that literally folks understand how they're supposed to do it, and then the role of the manager in deal reviews, in forecast meetings, in one-on-one development discussions. Managers are trained to help the sellers to get there. So I just think that the gold in this is the depth on the how to do it and how to reinforce it. So, yes, it's a big transformation, but if you have folks that want to get better, there is no reason why they would push back. I think it's one of the best approach and methodologies in sales, and actually I would expand it to customer success in the industry.
But what was the impact on you?
Oh, I felt pretty good. I had a good career. I was driving success. I felt more in control moving forward because it's bringing a deeper science to the madness, and it's really providing a North Star to how to execute. So I felt empowered. And I think great things for me happened after that. This is how I got my first chief revenue officer position and my second. And then you can see that the time to results is cut, in half. I think the first year at HackerOne, when we started to deploy the playbook and the methodology, we drove 40% increase in sales productivity within 9 months. So for me, it's now, of course, every company is different, and I'm seeing it at Foursquare right now. We have a tech business that's 12 years old, and we have a technology business that's really more recent, 2 years old. I can see how the playbook needs to be adapted based on the ideal customer profile, based on the domain, but the mechanics are valid in both. It is about understanding business value. It's about creating that business value. And it is about some of the mechanics we already talked about this morning. So the playbook is adapted to the industry. It's adapted to the maturity of the business, but the ground rules are the same. And it's propelling success.
I think this is a really interesting point in your career because obviously you've transitioned from MongoDB to HackerOne, taking on your first CRO position. Obviously, historically prior to that, you were very high velocity sales through the SMB and commercial. Talk to us about how you used and were able to adapt that kind of high velocity sales now more into the big and strategic stuff.
So to me, since the earlier days of my career, being a well-rounded CRO means you are able to flex between different type of sales motions and flex between different types of regions, because there's also selling to EMEA, US, APAC, and all of that. I had for many years that urge to start conquering more of the enterprise, longer sales cycle, higher dollars type of sales motion when I'd spent a lot of my career in, as you said, high velocity, low dollar, repeatability, scalability, which had been very successful. But to feel like a well-rounded CRO, I wanted to conquer that top of the pyramid. So, one thing I'll be candid about is, I knew I could do it, but I had not done it. Okay, so it's that, and I think a lot of sellers and CROs will probably feel the same way. At some point, you need to push yourself to get to the next step, and this is where again, the playbook, which the playbook we've been talking about in practice is a very enterprise playbook, right? It is designed to extract bigger business value. It is designed to justify premium. So, as a CRO deploying the playbook to attack, very large accounts in financial services, retail, all the way to sales cycles in government, public sector, I think the playbook had given me at least the foundation to understand what are the steps in the sales process, how do I think about how customers are buying, and how do I think about mapping our sales motion to it. The playbook gave me the foundation, and to be honest, the playbook empowered me to know that I could do this. And then, of course, again, it's about hiring the right leaders from there to manage those various business units and tackle those things that are very much in line with that way to think about the sales motion as a process. So became super successful very fast with the playbook, conquering a very new segment of the pyramid, never look back. And now the dance is more around how do you leverage some of those complex aspects of the sales motion, and how do you adapt them to a high velocity, low dollar? How do you adapt that to a middle of the market where the ASP may be a little bit lower? I think it's just flexing the playbook up and down across the pyramid in a way that's going to make sense. But at the end of the day, it's about delivering value to customers. It is easier to get access to a CEO in an SMB than it is to get access to a CEO in a larger account. But you need to get access to decision makers and economic buyers in both. How you get there is the difference, and this is where flexing the playbook is important.
Yeah. So obviously, having transitioned from HackerOne, you've taken a big CRO role at Foursquare, and the rules of the game are slightly different because you've obviously come from more of a software sales. Foursquare is more ad tech, but you still maintain that the sales motion is still relevant, even though you are selling to lots of different stakeholders, right? So how are you able to really adapt that to really, what is it you're having to do to really manage that and be effective even within a different kind of game, a different format?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I'm in the middle of it, so I can definitely, I am not going to fully declare success yet. I joined 7 months ago, but there's a lot of really beautiful progress happening. So, to give a little bit of context, so, one part of the Foursquare business is really around improving ROI of campaigns for marketers. And for that, we sell best-in-breed targeting and measurement solutions. That business is 12 years old. There is 3 dancers in the party. There's the brands, there are the agencies, and there are the partners. And then flip side to that, we are also empowering end customers, big brands directly to build technology and leverage data to 1, drive better business insights, and then 2, to really improve their app users experience. So there, the persona are very much head of data science, head of product, head of engineering. So more of a tech sell. One business is 12 years old. The other business is literally 2 years old. So the latter is a startup. The other one is an established business. Call me masochist, but I get to build and I get to optimize all at once. and looking for challenge, it's pretty cool. What I learned though, is again, at the end, it is about understanding who are you selling to? Who are the buyers, the economic buyers? And then who are the influencers, the champions, or folks that may just be coaches in the game? And at the end, for both businesses, complexity may be different. On our ad tech business, we have to sell to three parties. On the enterprise side of the house, it's literally one or two buying centers, but the mechanics are the same. It is about developing, value drivers that are relevant for both. It's about understanding how we do it better for both. So the mechanics are the same. One is startup. We are establishing the playbook brand new from scratch, easy to implement. And then on the older side of our business, we are really adapting the playbook to what has been built over the last 12 years to propels kind of the growth of that side of the business. So this would be a little bit more similar than to the MongoDB experience, where things that to really change and transform over time. Mechanics are the same, buyers different, value drivers different, but I'm able slowly but surely to have the two come together so that for a company that's gone through 3 acquisitions over the past few years, we have one go-to-market strategy, one playbook, one way to recruit, develop, execute, even if some of the attributes vary from one business unit to the other. So it's a brain challenging exercise in a very good way. And the playbook is making us move way faster than if we didn't have some of those foundations in place.
It's amazing to see that obviously you are essentially bringing almost different organizations together towards one sales motion, even though they're obviously working in slightly different ways with different personas. And again, it does really demonstrate, firstly, the complexity, but also how effective, this playbook really is. But you talk a lot about discipline and process as kind of core pillars to that. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think if you want to drive growth and improvement, you need to break things down in things you can inspect, things you can improve. So, whether we are talking about, above all, in the economic climate we're in right now, being very crystal clear on who is our ideal customer profile, building based on that, either segmentation or a list of target accounts that directly map to that ideal customer profile, essential. But then from there, what do we want the sales process to be, step by step? What does the customer need to do? What do we need to do? Leveraging things, of course, like MedPeak, so we can really inspect what are the activities we need to do by stages. Are we being effective at those things? If not, why? So when I mean process and systems, I mean both in the way we execute on our sales campaigns, but also literally the measurements in place we have, using tools to drive the inspection, and driving the inspection unlock, driving the coaching on things that are very, very specific. You cannot drive improvement and change when you look at the sales process holistically. You have to break it in small pieces so you can start tackling those little blockers one after the other. So that's what I mean by that. And then I think embedding that process in all the activities, it's like we said at the beginning, do I have the right sellers that can execute on that process? Do I have the enablement and the operational backbone to develop the reps on those minute things along the way, all the way to just literally driving the execution on a day-to-day basis. So it is a marriage, a wedding between process, systems, enablement, operations, and then the profession of being a world-class seller and a world-class sales leader.
one of the things that we haven't spoken about, obviously being, a very, very well-regarded, well-established CRO, you're also, a female, which is, a rarity these days. And I think addressing, the diversity, what does diversity in sales mean? And what are the levers that are really important to that, Marjorie?
Yeah, and here, I've been, I guess, rooting for diversity for years. I've tried to influence diversity as much as I could over the past few years. I think the topic of the power of diversity actually became very true for me at Foursquare. Foursquare, we have, about 50% of our sales organization female. First time, I used to stand up in all hands speaking about diversity. I only had like less than 30% of my team being female, and that's only speaking about gender diversity. I think we have a lot of work to do on the other dimensions of diversity. But, I knew this, but now I know this. It's diversity foster diversity. Like if you have half of your team females, starting at the leadership level, then naturally, more will come because people want to work with and for people that look like them. So I'll start on that topic, just emphasizing the fact that if you invest in driving diversity, more diversity will come. And then specifically for why are we even talking about diversity, And as a female, I want to be very meaningful in what when I'm saying without offending anybody. But, years ago, great sellers were folks that were hungry, coin-operated, had a good network. So the criterias and typically were extroverts. So just that list of required capabilities for a seller would actually exclude, probably a high population of females because of that. And that's me saying it, and I think we could debate on this. But now I think with the way the sales world has evolved, with playbooks like the one we just talked about, if we remind ourselves, what are the attributes of a great seller? Active listening, empathy, asking great questions. You don't necessarily need to be, the seller from 20 years ago. And I think because of those requirements have changed, active listening, empathy, asking great questions, business acumen. Actually, I think the playbook itself has opened up the pool of talent that could be absolutely amazing for sales roles, and the emphasis on enablement. Now we're not only looking for folks that are already fully baked world-class sellers. We're saying we have those attributes as a starter, but we can train people to become world-class. Again, that's opening up the pool of great talents that could become great sellers, and with that also potentially accelerate the career pathing of those diverse folks that could be joining the team to leadership roles. So the world is beautiful. The playbook also, I think, unlocked, increasing the pool of talent, supporting diversity both on the gender side and all types of diversities. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think thank you so much for sharing that, Marjorie. I suppose for any of our listeners that aren't aware of our podcast series, Culture Crunch, maybe we can pick up this conversation with our host, Kieran, and talk about this and dive a lot deeper into it, because it is a really important subject, and an important subject to us and probably to all of our listeners. So, thank you very much for sharing on that, and we'd love to obviously talk about that some more. I think, you know, one big thing that when we were last talking, Marjorie, you spoke about when you moved to the US in 2008 in the last big recession. Um, Obviously, we're now moving, or we're now in another one. How are you seeing the effects that this is having within the software market, and what sort of changes do you think that we've, you know, got to potentially look out for?
I would love to be able to comment on, you know, are we heading towards something that's going to be worse or not as bad as 2008? I don't know. But I do think, I mean, I think we can see it on social networks with a lot of layoffs going on. We can also see it in, I think everybody is refocusing on cost savings, profitability, and with that, a big focus on improving sales efficiency, like getting a greater return from the assets you do have. I think for me, you know, when I compare 2008, literally when I moved to the US in the middle of it all, and today, I think that what 15, is it 15 years? What 15 years do to an industry? I think we have the power to track way more what's going on because of systems that are in place, playbooks like the one we talked about that help us really understand how slower or how faster deals are moving, what is now required to get deals done versus what was needed maybe 12 months ago. So I think businesses are have way more visibility on the impact of potential changes in economic climate because of process systems and all of that. And this is very empowering. So for those of you, listening here, I think leverage the processes you've implemented, starting with the ICP, all the way to your sales stages to be more granular in understanding what actually is going on. And I think because visibility is there, I can speak for, Foursquare particularly, you are way more nimble. If you understand in this climate, what are the industries that may be affecting more than others, then shift your ICPs laser fast, realign your outbound and pipeline generation campaigns to that new ICP to combat any potential effect you may have on the business. And of course, not to do free advertising, but I'll still do a little bit, things like Gong over the past few years, building trackers to just understand how the conversations are changing, are very informative to start making faster business decisions to avoid, greater impact. So that's what I would say on the tracking, and then really forcing your system to be agile, which means, you can change direction to realign to where the opportunities are very quickly. And then cutting costs, I think everything we've been talking about this morning, from driving improvement at every step of the sales motion, increasing enablement to get there. I think the top metric people should be looking at right now is, can you at least maintain, if not continue grow your sales productivity quarter over quarter? So is your sales efficiency strong? I particularly look at my quota attainment on average quarter over quarter. Are we, if you start seeing your quota attainment drop, reevaluating your capacity model, do you have the right number of sellers with the opportunities at hand? So those are kind of key metrics I look at to make sure that we are shifting resources in the right places as fast as we can. And, some of this is really helping to reduce the potential impact of the economic climate. Of course, every company is different. The last thing I would mention here is, making sure that you are clear on what is the positive business outcome your solution generates. Like Foursquare is helping driving better business insights. Okay, awesome during a potential recession. Being able to inform how businesses are making critical decisions is a must do. It should be recession proof. Our second value driver is improving app user experience. People that are generating 80% of their business through their apps and their app experience. It's their chance to retain users and drive better usage for users. That should be recession proof. So I think for companies to just really make sure they realign their go-to-market to those business mission critical value drivers during a time like this is essential, because budgets are going to get cut. You need to have a good story to justify your business case with a CFO all the way to a CEO. And for smaller businesses, some of those budget decisions are even escalated at the board level. So do you have sellers that have a champion that can sell for you at the C level the right story? So it is a cross-functional effort to refocus, and I think the playbook is definitely helping to be more nimble in times like this.
It's incredible insight, and I know our guests are going to be really, really interested with your view on it. I have an interesting question. It's more around, Marjorie and the future and the end game for you. Have you thought about where the end game is? Obviously, you're now second time CRO. Where do you see yourself going, Marjorie? What does the future have for you?
It's a wonderful question. So maybe one thing I'll tell you is I've been so, I just love sales. It's in my blood. Don't even speak about it to my husband. So love sales. And then at Foursquare, what's been very exciting for me is now customer success is under my purview. So I kind of own the end-to-end customer journey. I'm able to, those processes we've been talking about in the playbook, I'm able to make sure that it starts pre-sales, but then it becomes so vibrant and true all the way to the entire customer journey, the retain, the expand, and the advocate. So I think that has been very fulfilling for me to be able to really own it all on that side, to make the playbook consistent all the way through. So it's been very fulfilling, and I'm very happy about that. Part of Marjorie thinks, I just love this so much, I could do this forever. That's one part. And then, the other part, the secret part, my husband will not watch this video. As part of working through the playbook, I get to align and work very closely with marketing, with product, and really once you get to embed this playbook across the entire company, it is quite magical. So maybe one day Marjorie will give it a shot at the CEO thing, because owning it all it's not a power thing. It's just driving that customer value when you can impact all pieces of the puzzle is something in the back of my mind. That's a little tempting. Don't tell my CEO either.
Yeah, it was probably a weighted question, if I'm being completely Marjorie. I think that the way you talk about just everything, you're not just focusing on revenue, the way you talk about how business comes together, you really do communicate and talk like a CEO and have the passion of a CEO and looking, way above and beyond just the revenue part of it. And it's an absolute privilege and honor to listen to you. You're a very, very inspiring individual, and I think there is a lot to come from that. And it's absolutely a field that I can one day see you playing in.
One day, maybe,
But no, we won't tell your husband. We'll cut that out of this one, okay?
Of course, until such point may or may not happen, missions like really creating a new category with geolocation, tech and data is very fulfilling. So I think watch out for Foursquare. We are definitely changing the way decisions are made and changing the way literally as a consumer, you experience the world between where you are and how you move.
So I think it has been a truly inspirational conversation. This is the point when we reflect, and this is actually probably one of the most important interviews we've ever done, and I'll explain why. So the 33 CxOs, 2 series, there were no female representatives. The Playbook Universe, no female representatives. So you're the first female in any iteration of the CxO or Playbook Universe. Within the 2020, there is obviously representation, but that's a different, kind of a different format. So for me, this is a really, really important, probably the most important interview. And it's not just diversity for the sake of diversity. And I really want to emphasize that, because I think what this emphasizes more than anything else is that this playbook was designed with a very primitive understanding of what it takes to be successful. And we can almost forgive 20, 30 years ago, it was a very different world. It was very male, domineering, very kind of almost ego-driven, coffee and other thing fueled world of sales, right? And that's where it kind of came from and the genesis of this. But I think the power of what we're talking about today is that through its evolution, through the various iterations, we've actually realized that the power isn't about beating your chest. It's about that North Star that you spoke about. The North Star is value. And actually what you really demonstrate more than anyone else, and I think this is really fundamental, is that to establish value, it's not about being salesy. It's about active listening. It's about empathy. It's about business-driven conversations. And I think what you've been able to really conquer with real grace is the fact that you've been able to understand how do we articulate and bake value in at every single stage of the process from start to finish. And I think this is why this is so important, so revolutionary. And I think you're a fantastic advocate, and you've got a huge reputation. You really do stand amongst, with real credit. And I really want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to speak with us, because it has really been inspirational, and it's been fantastic to just spend this time with you and really share your story.
Yeah, thank you. I'm grateful to be able to speak about all of this. And, it's also very reflective for me to just look. You made me look at the last 22 years. So thank you for that. And then I think the one thing I would say is, sales is a profession. Like anything, it's a craft you can master. And I think more than ever, thinking about the economy and the world we live in is just, it's just a wonderful place for anyone that has smarts, hunger, and then an appetite to just get better, to excel. So I'm very grateful for the time we spent together. I hope it's going to be useful to listeners. And yeah.
Absolutely. Marjorie, it's been an absolute delight having you on the show. And I think I'd just add one final comment to it, which I think, for me, I think you've really been able to articulate and demonstrate that, the playbook isn't an enterprise tool, right? A playbook to be able to sell enterprise technology. It's a tool that, with the right mind and the right ability to be able to understand how you break that down, you can apply it to absolutely anything, which is what you've been able to demonstrate throughout your entire career, starting at MongoDB, from that transition, using that playbook to transition from a high velocity sale into an enterprise model, into more of an enterprise model into more of a high velocity model, and then continue to take that through now to buying and different buying personas and different audience has just been absolutely incredible. So it's been absolutely truly inspirational, and I'm absolutely 100% confident that all of our listeners are going to really enjoy this one. So thanks ever so much for sharing in your wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you.
So just to close, to all our listeners, thank you so much for listening in today. If you like what you've heard, please do subscribe to our various channels, YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. But we will look forward to welcoming you back to another session soon. Thank you very much.